I caught my wife's text to her best friend. He doesn't know I'm draining the joint account. $85,000 so far. I caught my wife's text to her best friend at 2:34 p.m. on a Wednesday, and my entire body went cold despite the summer heat pouring through our kitchen windows. Gabrielle's phone was lying face up on the counter between us while she made tea, and the message from Courtney had just appeared on the lock screen. The preview was enough. More than enough. Her response came 3 seconds later, and I watched it materialize in real time while my wife hummed quietly and poured hot water over a chamomile tea bag, completely oblivious. Yeah, $85,000. Maybe more by next week. He checks the account maybe once a month. Never notices. I'm almost ready to disappear. My vision tunneled. The edges of the kitchen blurred. Gabrielle turned around with her tea, smiled at me with the same warm smile I'd woken up to for 6 years of marriage, and said something about dinner plans that I didn't hear because my brain was screaming a single word on loop. Disappear. 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 I'd been working from home as a software engineer for the past 3 years, ever since the pandemic made remote work permanent at my company. Gabrielle worked as a dental hygienist at a clinic 15 minutes from our house in Beaverton, Oregon. We had what I thought was a good life, a normal life, the kind of comfortable middle-class existence that doesn't make for interesting stories, but makes for happy marriages. We'd met in college at Oregon State, dated for 4 years, got married when we were 26, bought a modest 3-bedroom house when we were 28. No kids yet. We'd agreed to wait until we were 30, but we had a dog named Copper and a vegetable garden in the backyard and Friday night dinners at our favorite sushi place. We had a joint checking account that we both contributed to for shared expenses, mortgage, utilities, groceries, the usual. I made more than Gabrielle, about $120,000 a year to her $58,000, so I contributed proportionally more. We'd set the account up 5 years ago, right after we got married, and it had always worked fine. We trusted each other. That was the foundation of everything. Trust. Except now I was staring at a text message that said my wife had stolen $85,000 from our joint account and was planning to disappear. The number hit me like a physical blow. $85,000. That wasn't a few hundred here and there. That wasn't a shopping spree or a vacation splurge. That was methodical, sustained theft over weeks or months. That was planning. That was intent. I forced my face to stay neutral, while Gabrielle sat down across from me at the kitchen table, sipped her tea, and started talking about her day at work. Something about a difficult patient, a root canal, equipment that needed replacing. I made appropriate noises, nodded at the right moments, and tried to keep my hands from shaking. When had I last checked our joint account? She was right, maybe a month ago. I had my own personal checking account for my direct deposits and savings, and I just transferred a set amount to the joint account every month on autopilot. $3,500 on the first of every month like clockwork. Gabrielle did the same, though her contribution was $1,500 to match our income ratio. The joint account was supposed to hover around $8,000 to $10,000 at any given time, enough to cover monthly expenses with a small buffer. If Gabrielle had taken $85,000 from it, that meant she'd been depositing money and then withdrawing it, or she'd been transferring from somewhere else, or there was something fundamentally wrong with my understanding of our finances. I needed to check the account immediately, but I couldn't do it while she was sitting right there watching me. So I waited, smiled, finished the conversation about her day, then excused myself to my home office on the second floor, claiming I had a meeting in 10 minutes. Gabrielle nodded, kissed my cheek, said she was going to start prepping dinner. The moment my office door closed, I pulled up our bank's website on my laptop. Columbia River Bank. We'd been with them since college. I logged into the joint account, the one I'd barely looked at in weeks, and felt my stomach drop through the floor. The current balance was $1,243, $1,200 in an account that should have had at least $8,000 or $9,000. I scrolled through the transaction history with hands that had started trembling. The pattern was immediately clear and absolutely devastating. Every month for the past 11 months, Gabrielle had been making large withdrawals. Not one big theft, which might have triggered fraud alerts, but steady, strategic withdrawals. $6,000 here, $8,500 there, $7,200, $9,100, all listed as transfers to an external account. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. I did the math in my head, though my brain felt sluggish with shock. 11 months of withdrawals averaging around $7,700 per month. That came out to approximately $84,700. The text had said $85,000. The number matched. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was real. My wife had been systematically draining our joint account for almost a year, and I'd never noticed because I'd been too busy, too trusting, too stupid to check. I felt something crack inside my chest, some fundamental belief about my life that had just proven to be completely false. The office felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. I stood up, paced to the window, looked out at our quiet suburban street where nothing ever happened and everything was supposed to be safe. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to call anyone. I pulled up the bank's customer service number, then stopped. What was I going to say? My wife stole from our joint account? Technically, it was her account too. She had every legal right to withdraw money from it. That was the whole point of a joint account. Shared access, shared responsibility. But $85,000? That went beyond shared expenses. That was theft, morally, if not legally. I needed advice, legal advice, financial advice, some kind of professional guidance from someone who wasn't having a complete psychological breakdown in their home office while their wife made dinner downstairs. I called my older brother first. David, 38, worked as a financial advisor in Seattle, had always been the responsible one, the person I went to when I needed help making sense of complicated situations. He answered on the third ring. This better be important. I'm with a client. It's important. I kept my voice low, barely above a whisper. Gabrielle was 2 floors down, but I felt paranoid. I think my wife is stealing money from our joint account. The line went quiet for a moment. Then David's voice came back, much more serious. What do you mean stealing? How much? $85,000 over the past 11 months. She's been making regular large withdrawals to an external account. I just saw a text on her phone saying she's planning to disappear. David let out a long breath. Jesus Christ. Nathan, are you sure? I'm looking at the bank records right now. It's all there. Withdrawals every few weeks, always to the same external account. I never noticed because I don't check the joint account regularly. You need a lawyer, David said immediately. Like right now, today, before you confront her, before you do anything else. You need legal protection. She has just as much right to that account as you do, which means this is complicated. David, what if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation? With $85,000, there's no good explanation for that, man. Either she's hiding money from you, which is financial infidelity and grounds for divorce, or she's preparing to leave and taking your money with her, which is worse. Either way, you need a lawyer before she knows you know. He gave me the name of an attorney in Portland. Diana Sutherland, family law specialist, 22 years of experience, had handled David's friend's messy divorce 2 years ago. I scribbled the name down on a post-it note, thanked him, hung up, sat staring at the pink square of paper like it was a diagnosis of terminal illness. I'd been married for 6 years. 6 years of shared breakfasts and inside jokes and weekend hikes and late-night conversations. 6 years of building a life with someone I thought I knew completely. And now I was calling a divorce attorney because that person had stolen $85,000 from me and was planning to disappear. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. I called Diana Sutherland's office, got an appointment for the next morning at 9 a.m. The receptionist asked what the consultation was regarding. I said potential divorce and financial fraud, and my voice cracked on the word fraud. That night, I lay next to Gabrielle in our bed, the bed we'd picked out together at IKEA 3 years ago, and listened to her breathe. She'd made salmon for dinner, my favorite, with roasted vegetables and wild rice. We'd watched an episode of the show we were binge-watching together. She'd laughed at the jokes, held my hand on the couch, kissed me goodnight like she'd done 1,000 times before. Like she wasn't planning to disappear with $85,000 of stolen money. I wanted to shake her awake, demand answers, scream until the truth came out. But David's advice kept playing in my head. Don't confront her until you have legal protection. Don't let her know you know. So I lay there in the dark, not sleeping, while my wife slept peacefully beside me, and tried to figure out where everything had gone wrong. Had there been signs, red flags I'd missed? I thought back over the past year, searching for clues. Gabrielle had been working more overtime, she'd said, picking up extra shifts at the clinic to save money for a down payment on a bigger house. That's what she'd told me 6 months ago when she started coming home later, sometimes not until 8 or 9 at night. I'd believed her, trusted her, supported her ambition. Had she been lying then too? Was there even overtime? Or was that just a cover for wherever she was really going, whatever she was really doing? I thought about the external account all the money had been transferred to. Whose account was it? Gabrielle's personal account? An account she'd opened secretly? Or worse, an account she shared with someone else? The thought hit me like ice water. What if there was someone else? What if the money and the disappearing act were connected to an affair? My mind spiraled through possibilities, each one worse than the last. By the time my alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., I'd slept maybe 90 minutes total. Gabrielle stirred beside me, reached out to hit snooze on her own alarm, then rolled over and kissed my shoulder. Morning, babe. You okay? You were tossing and turning all night. I'm fine. Bad dreams. She looked at me with what seemed like genuine concern. Want to talk about it? No. It's okay. Just work stress. I'll be fine. She nodded, got up, headed to the shower. I watched her walk across the bedroom, same as every morning, and felt like I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. Diana Sutherland's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel, 15th floor, with a view of the Willamette River. She was in her mid-50s, gray blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, dark-rimmed glasses, handshake like a vice. She sat me down in a leather chair across from her desk and said 3 words. Tell me everything. So I did. The text message, the bank records, the 11 months of withdrawals, the $85,000, the word, disappear. Diana listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up. Do you have documentation? Screenshots of the text? Bank statements? I pulled out my phone, Showed her the photo I'd taken of Gabrielle's text conversation with Courtney. Showed her the bank records I'd downloaded to a PDF file that morning. Diana examined everything carefully. "This is bad," she said finally, "but it's also actionable. Your wife has been systematically withdrawing large amounts from a joint account without your knowledge or consent. In Oregon, even though it's a joint account and she has legal access, the fact that she's doing it secretly with intent to defraud you in the context of marriage makes this financial misconduct. It's grounds for divorce and potentially for legal action." "Can I get the money back?" I asked. "Depends on where it went and whether it still exists. We'll need to do a full forensic accounting analysis. Track every dollar, find the external account, determine if the money was spent, hidden, or transferred to a third party. That's going to require subpoenas, possibly investigators. It's not quick, and it's not cheap. I don't care about quick or cheap. I want to know the truth." Diana nodded. "Then we start with a forensic accountant. I know someone excellent. Lawrence Kim, 30 years in the business, has worked on high-profile fraud cases. He can trace financial transactions that people think are untraceable. I'll set up a meeting. In the meantime, you need to protect yourself. Don't move any money around. Don't confront your wife. Don't do anything that could be construed as retaliatory. We build the case quietly, gather all the evidence, then we strike hard." "What happens when we strike?" I asked. "We file for divorce, we freeze the joint account, we subpoena her financial records, and we pursue recovery of the stolen funds. If we can prove intent to defraud, we might even pursue criminal charges. But that's a long way down the road. Right now, we gather evidence." I left Diana's office feeling simultaneously better and worse. Better because I had professional help, someone who knew how to navigate this nightmare. Worse because the word divorce had been spoken out loud, made real, given weight. Lawrence Kim's office was less polished than Diana's, a small suite in an older building in southeast Portland, but the man himself was sharp as a razor. Late 50s, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of intense focus that made you feel like you were the only thing in the world that mattered. He took one look at the bank records and said, "We had a case. This is textbook financial concealment," he said. "Regular withdrawals just under the threshold that would trigger automatic fraud alerts, always to the same external account, never on predictable dates, which suggests she was being strategic about timing. This wasn't impulse. This was planning. Can you trace where the money went?" "I can trace it anywhere. Give me access to your bank records, your wife's financial information if you can get it, and about a week. I'll find out where every penny went." I signed the authorization forms, gave Lawrence access to the joint account records, drove home feeling like I was in a movie, some noir thriller where nothing was what it seemed, and trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. That night, Gabrielle came home at 8:15 p.m., later than her shift should have ended. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Work ran late. We had an emergency patient, infected tooth, had to stay and help Dr. Brennan." She said it so smoothly, so convincingly, that if I hadn't seen the text message, hadn't spent the day with lawyers and forensic accountants, I would have believed her completely. Over the next week, I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked Gabrielle's phone whenever she left it unattended. I monitored her location on the Find My Friends app we'd set up years ago for safety. I listened to her phone conversations from the next room. I was looking for evidence, for proof, for some explanation that would make sense of the $85,000 and the plan to disappear. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. 3 days after my meeting with Lawrence Kim, Gabrielle left her phone charging in the living room while she took a shower. I grabbed it, opened her messages with Courtney, scrolled back through weeks of conversation. The full picture emerged in fragments, pieces of a puzzle I'd been too blind to see. 6 months ago, Gabrielle had started an affair. His name was Derek. No last name in the texts, just Derek. They'd met at a dental conference in Seattle, according to the messages. He was a dentist, too, owned his own practice in Vancouver, Washington, across the state line. The messages were explicit, detailed, the kind of intimacy I thought Gabrielle shared only with me. But worse than the affair was the plan. Gabrielle and Derek had been planning to leave together, to start a new life somewhere else. Costa Rica, the texts said. They'd been researching expatriate communities, cost of living, visa requirements, and they'd been pooling money. Gabrielle's texts to Courtney laid it out clearly. "I've got $85,000 from the joint account. Derek's been saving too. He's got about $60,000. We're leaving in 2 months, maybe sooner if Nathan gets suspicious." Courtney's responses were encouraging, supportive, telling Gabrielle she deserved to be happy, that Nathan would never know what hit him. I felt physically sick reading it. Hands shaking, stomach churning, vision blurring. My wife was having an affair and planning to leave the country with $85,000 of our money and a dentist named Derek. The shower was still running upstairs. I took screenshots of everything, sent them to my own phone, then deleted the message history showing I'd sent them. Put Gabrielle's phone back exactly where I'd found it. Walked outside into our backyard and threw up in the rose bushes. The next morning, I called Diana Sutherland, told her about Derek, about the affair, about the plan to leave for Costa Rica. She was quiet for a long moment. "This changes things," she said. "This is now provable intent to defraud. She's having an affair, stealing marital assets, and planning to flee the country. We can file for immediate divorce, seek emergency injunctions to freeze all accounts, and possibly pursue criminal charges for theft and fraud. Do it, I said. Diana filed the divorce papers that afternoon, filed emergency motions to freeze the joint account and subpoena Gabrielle's personal financial records, requested an expedited hearing based on the flight risk. The judge granted it, hearing set for 8 days later. In the meantime, Gabrielle had no idea anything was wrong. She came home from work, made dinner, watched TV, slept beside me like everything was normal. I played along because Diana had told me to. Don't show your hand until the hearing, she'd said. We need her to feel secure, unsuspecting. The moment she knows you know, she might accelerate her timeline and disappear before we can freeze the money. So I lied, smiled, pretended. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Lawrence Kim called 3 days before the hearing. I found the external account, he said. It's a personal checking account in your wife's name at a different bank, Oregon Pacific Credit Union. Current balance is $91,340. The extra $6,000 came from her own paychecks. She's been depositing her entire salary and living completely off your contributions to the joint account. Jesus, there's more. I found transfers from the account to a Derek Langston in Vancouver, Washington. About $15,000 total over the past 2 months. Small amounts, $1,500 to $3,000 at a time. She's been funding his life too. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. I asked Lawrence to document everything, prepare a full report for the hearing. He said he'd have it ready. The night before the hearing, Gabrielle told me she loved me. We were lying in bed, she was scrolling through her phone, and she just said it out of nowhere. I love you, Nathan. You know that, right? I looked at her, at the woman I'd married, who was planning to leave me, who'd stolen $85,000, who was having an affair and had been lying to my face for months. I said it back. I love you too. Because what else was I supposed to say? The truth? That I knew everything. That her entire world was about to collapse. That in 12 hours she'd be served with divorce papers and frozen bank accounts and a forensic accountant's report detailing every dollar she'd stolen. So I lied. One more time. One more night. The hearing was at 9 a.m. at the Multnomah County Courthouse. Diana had arranged for Gabrielle to be served with papers that morning at her work, 30 minutes before the hearing started. That way she couldn't run, couldn't empty the accounts, couldn't warn Derek. I sat in the courtroom at 8:55 a.m. watching the door. Diana sat beside me, looking calm and professional. Lawrence Kim was there too, holding a thick folder of financial records. At 9:03 a.m., Gabrielle walked in. She looked confused, then angry, then devastated when she saw me sitting with Diana. A process server followed her, confirmed she'd been properly served. The judge called the hearing to order. Honorable Linda Winters, 26 years on the bench, gray hair, severe expression, zero patience for nonsense. Diana stood, presented our case, showed the bank records, the text messages, the evidence of the affair, the plan to flee to Costa Rica, showed Lawrence Kim's forensic analysis, proving Gabrielle had systematically withdrawn $85,000 and transferred portions to her lover, requested immediate freezing of all accounts, emergency division of assets, and expedited divorce on grounds of adultery and financial fraud. Gabrielle's attorney, a young guy who looked overwhelmed, tried to argue that the joint account was legally accessible to Gabrielle. Judge Winters cut him off. Accessible, yes, but not for the purpose of fraud and concealment in the context of planned abandonment. I'm granting the emergency motion. All accounts frozen. Assets to be divided according to equitable distribution after full financial discovery. The courtroom felt like it was underwater. Everything muted, distant. Gabrielle was crying, trying to catch my eye, but I wouldn't look at her. The hearing lasted 43 minutes. By the time it was over, Gabrielle's access to the money was gone. The $91,340 in her personal account, frozen. The joint account, frozen. Her ability to leave the country, complicated by the active divorce proceedings. Diana had also filed a motion to recover the $15,000 Gabrielle had given to Derek, claiming it was dissipation of marital assets. The judge granted it. Gabrielle would have to account for every dollar. Outside the courtroom, Gabrielle tried to approach me. Nathan, please. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I kept walking. Diana beside me, a protective barrier. You stole $85,000 and planned to leave the country with your lover. What exactly needs explaining? It wasn't like that. I was unhappy. I felt trapped. I needed an escape. So you stole my money? Our money, she said, her voice desperate. It was our joint account. I had just as much right to it as you, except you were taking it without my knowledge to fund an affair and an escape plan. That's not a withdrawal, Gabrielle. That's theft. Her face crumpled. I loved you. I did. I just what? Loved someone else more? Loved money more? Loved the idea of running away to Costa Rica more? I don't know, she whispered. I walked away, got in my car. Drove to David's house in Seattle because I couldn't face going home to a house filled with Gabrielle's things, Gabrielle's presence, Gabrielle's lies. David let me stay in his guest room, didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer and turned on a basketball game. Over the next 2 months, the divorce proceedings unfolded with brutal efficiency. Gabrielle tried to fight it at first, hired a better lawyer, claimed she'd been planning to tell me about the affair, that she'd panicked and made bad decisions. But the evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, bank records, transfers to Derek, plans to flee the country. Diana demolished every defense. The final settlement came through in late November. Gabrielle was ordered to return the full $85,000 plus interest. The $91,340 in her personal account was split, with $85,000 going back to me and the remaining $6,340 divided as part of the asset split. The house would be sold, proceeds divided equally after the mortgage was paid. Gabrielle would also pay my legal fees, about $28,000, as a penalty for financial misconduct. In total, I recovered about $94,000 of the stolen money and half the house value. Not everything, but close enough. Derek Langston, the dentist, had his own problems. His wife found out about the affair when Gabrielle's lawyer subpoenaed him for a deposition about the $15,000 in transfers. Turned out Derek had been married for 12 years, had 3 kids, and had lied to Gabrielle about being divorced. His wife filed for divorce within a week. His dental practice took a hit when the local news covered the scandal. Small-town Vancouver, Washington didn't take kindly to dentists who had affairs and helped steal from their lovers' husbands. Last I heard, he'd moved his practice to Montana and changed his name. Gabrielle moved back in with her parents in Eugene. Lost her job at the dental clinic when the story got out. The dental community is small. Word travels fast. She sent me an email 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Said she was sorry, that she'd made terrible choices, that she understood if I never forgave her. I deleted it without responding. Some things don't deserve a reply. I sold the house in Beaverton, took my half of the proceeds, and bought a smaller place in Portland, closer to downtown. Started therapy with Dr. Raymond Foster, 63 years in practice, calm voice, good listener. He helped me process the betrayal, the anger, the sense of violation that came with learning your entire marriage had been a lie. It took a year before I could think about Gabrielle without feeling physically ill. Took another year before I could consider dating again. When I finally did, I was careful, painfully careful. Kept separate accounts, watched for red flags, questioned everything. My current girlfriend, a woman named Jenna who teaches history at Portland State, thinks I'm paranoid about money. She's probably right. But she doesn't push it, doesn't ask for access to my accounts, doesn't suggest joint finances. She understands that trust is something I have to rebuild slowly, brick by brick, after it was demolished by someone who promised to love me forever and then stole $85,000 to run away with a married dentist. Sometimes I think about that text message, the one I saw on Gabrielle's phone that started everything. He doesn't know I'm draining the joint account, $85,000 so far. 9 words that destroyed a marriage, exposed a fraud, and taught me the hardest lesson I've ever learned. That love without honesty is just performance art. That trust has to be verified, not just given. That the person sleeping beside you might be planning to disappear while you dream. I'm smarter now. Sadder, maybe. More cynical, definitely. But smarter. And I'll never make the mistake of blind trust again. The $85,000 sits in an investment account now, growing steadily. I call it my trust fund. Not because it's a fund I trust, but because it's the fund that taught me what trust actually costs when you give it to the wrong person. Everything. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.